was never like any rivalry between you and Mr. Jackson?
Not to me, no.
Once it's done, it's immortal. It's, you can't go back. It's a moment that's remembered forever.
In the 1980s, music had two kings on separate thrones. Michael Jackson, the king of pop, a global unifier loved by all, and Prince, the rebellious purple-clad genius. To the public, they were two distinct titans. But this was a carefully managed illusion. The reality was a deeply personal and obsessive rivalry, a silent Cold War fought for supremacy through rejected collaborations, secret power plays, and public showdowns. For decades, the true depth of their feud was a closely guarded secret. The story of why these two giants could never share the spotlight doesn't begin in a recording studio. It begins with a single, legendary performance, the night their Cold War turned hot, live on stage, in a showdown that would define their rivalry forever. The battle on holy ground. Their rivalry wasn't just in their minds. It had already exploded into a disastrous public showdown that left one of them publicly humiliated and obsessed with revenge. The year was 1983, and the air in the Shrine Auditorium was electric. On stage was the godfather of soul himself, James Brown, and he was holding court. After finishing a song, he pointed to the balcony and announced a surprise guest. Michael Jackson, the king of pop. Michael, impossibly cool and graceful, glided down to the stage. He paid his respects to his idol, sang a flawless impromptu verse, busted out a few signature spins, and performed the moonwalk, which sent the crowd into a frenzy. It was a perfect, mesmerizing display of star power. But then, just as he was about to leave, Michael leaned in and whispered something in James Brown's ear. A moment later, Brown announced another guest, Prince. This was the trap. Michael had masterfully set the stage, and now it was Prince's turn to follow a flawless performance. The competitive energy was palpable. Prince, never one to back down, struts on stage with his guitar. But where Michael was smooth, Prince was chaotic. He grabs the microphone, his movements jerky and aggressive. He launches into a blistering, almost dissonant guitar solo, his face contorted with effort. He takes off his shirt, flails across the stage, and in a clumsy, desperate finale, he grabs a prop street lamppost, loses his balance, and tumbles awkwardly into the crowd. It was a disaster. He had tried to outshine Michael with raw, chaotic energy, but instead, he looked amateurish and out of control. This public failure was the moment that lit the fuse on their ticking time bomb of a rivalry. For Prince, the humiliation was immense. He felt he had been set up and embarrassed by his rival on the hallowed ground of their shared idol. From that day forward, the competition became an obsession. Every success Michael achieved was no longer just an industry headline. It was a personal insult that had to be answered. The stakes of their silent war had just been raised for the entire world to see. To understand why they were on a collision course, you have to look inside their minds. Their psychological roots were in complete opposition. Michael was a tormented perfectionist, a product of the Motown machine and a brutal childhood under his father, Joe Jackson. His entire artistic identity was built on a desperate, lifelong quest for universal love and acceptance. He wanted to be the biggest, most beloved entertainer in the world, a figure who transcended race and genre. Prince, on the other hand, was a self-made prodigy from Minneapolis, a fierce individualist who taught himself dozens of instruments and valued artistic freedom and authenticity above all else. He didn't crave universal acceptance. He demanded respect for his uncompromising vision. Michael built bridges to the mainstream. Prince set fire to them. Their fundamentally different philosophies meant they were destined to clash. This looming shadow of their rivalry grew darker as the 80s progressed. While Michael's 1982 album Thriller was shattering every record in music history and making him the biggest star the world had ever seen, it's crucial to remember what Prince was doing. He was building his own revolutionary empire, releasing the groundbreaking album 1999 that same year. And just as Thriller fever was at its peak, Prince unleashed Purple Rain in 1984, a cultural phenomenon that spawned a hit movie and a chart-topping album, making him a rock god. The world saw two geniuses at work, but they saw a battlefield. Every record-breaking success for Michael was a direct challenge to Prince, a reminder that the mainstream throne was occupied, And every boundary-pushing, critically acclaimed album from Prince was a threat to Michael's carefully crafted pop dominance, a sign that another king was rising. The world wasn't big enough for both of them. When an offer was finally made for them to collaborate on what would become one of the biggest songs of the decade, their private Cold War was about to reach its explosive breaking point. The insult that killed a masterpiece. At the absolute peak of their powers, a single line in a song would reveal the unbridgeable gap between them and kill the biggest collaboration in music history before it even began. By the mid-1980s, Michael Jackson and Prince were not just musicians. They were planets, each with their own gravitational pull, their own moons, and their own devoted populations. Michael was a post-thriller global deity. He was a friend to presidents and movie stars, a figure who transcended music to become a living myth. His every move was a global event. Simultaneously, Prince had unleashed Purple Rain, the triple threat masterpiece of an album, film, and tour that made him a rock god. He was the enigmatic, hyper-talented, and dangerously sexy alternative to Michael's polished perfection. They were both at the absolute zenith of their fame and creative power, two unstoppable forces reigning over parallel universes. But while they ruled separately, the world and the music industry desperately wanted to see them unite. The idea of a Michael Jackson and Prince duet was the holy grail of 80s pop culture, a collaboration so monumental it would have shaken the world. And in 1986, it almost happened. Michael Jackson and his legendary producer, Quincy Jones, were deep in the process of creating the follow-up to Thriller, an album that had the impossible task of being even bigger than the best-selling album of all time. They needed a blockbuster, a statement, and they decided the ultimate power move was a duet with Prince on a tough, aggressive new track called Bad. The stage was set for a historic peace treaty, a meeting of the two kings that would have defined the decade. The secret meeting was arranged. Prince was invited to Michael's home studio to hear the demo. As Quincy Jones later recounted, the atmosphere was thick with tension. Michael was reportedly shy and awkward, while Prince was cool and suspicious. This wasn't a friendly jam session. It was a summit between rival superpowers. Michael played the track. The beat was infectious. The energy was high, but Prince's focus narrowed in on the very first line Michael sang, "Your bud is mine." That was the insult that killed the masterpiece. To understand the depth of this insult, one must understand the fundamental difference in their artistic DNA. Michael's world was one of meticulously crafted universal pop. The lyric, likely intended as a piece of street-tough posturing, came across as a calculated pop product. Prince's world, however, was built on raw authenticity, improvisation, and a fluid, almost dangerous sexuality. For him, dominance in a song wasn't about a scripted line. It was about who could outplay, outsing, and outperform the other in the moment. The line, "Your bud is mine," was, in his eyes, a sterile, pre-packaged attempt at asserting control. He interpreted it not as a figure of speech, but as a clear and deliberate attempt by Michael to sonically subordinate him, to cast him as the loser in their duet before it even started. To Prince, it was the ultimate sign of disrespect. His response was legendary. After hearing the track, he coolly looked at Michael and reportedly said, "You don't need me to be on this to make it a hit." It was a masterful rejection, both a compliment and a dismissal. He was simultaneously acknowledging Michael's power while refusing to bend a knee to it. But Prince's true response came later, in an act of pure artistic defiance. He reportedly took the demo, went back to his own creative sanctuary at Paisley Park, and recorded his own blistering version of Bad, sending it back to Quincy Jones. The message was unmistakable. This is how funk is done. This is real attitude. He had turned their proposed collaboration into a competition and declared himself the winner. This wasn't just a missed song. It was the definitive, private confirmation that their rivalry was too deep, their egos too vast, and their artistic philosophies too different for them to ever coexist on the same track. The world was robbed of a creative supernova. The music video alone would have been a cultural landmark, a dance-off for the ages between Michael's razor-sharp choreography and Prince's explosive, spontaneous genius. It was a guaranteed classic, vaporized by 4 words. The battle lines were now permanently drawn. The dream of collaboration was dead. and the feud would escalate. From this point forward, it would be fought through subliminal disses in their music, competing world tours, and a relentless silent obsession with one-upping each other. The world was denied a masterpiece, but the silent war for the throne of pop music had just been officially declared. The War of Whispers and Shadows. With the dream of collaboration dead, the rivalry devolved into a series of petty and obsessive games, each designed to prove who was the true king. The immediate fallout from the bad rejection was felt across the industry. Michael released the song as a powerful solo track, and the album became a colossal success. But it was forever haunted by the ghost of what could have been. The world was left to wonder how a song about a confrontation would have sounded with two actual rivals singing it. The failed duet became a legendary piece of pop music lore, a symbol of the unbridgeable chasm between the two artists. This chasm widened even further with the We Are the World charity single in 1985. Organized by Michael and Lionel Richie, the event was a massive gathering of music's biggest stars. Almost everyone was there, except Prince. His notable and controversial absence was seen as a major snub, a public declaration that he was not part of their world. While his camp claimed he was unavailable, the industry insiders and the media interpreted it as another shot in the Cold War. It cemented his image as the ultimate outsider, the one genius who refused to play by Hollywood's rules, further distancing himself from Michael's universe of mainstream appeal and celebrity unity. With collaboration off the table, their competition became a war of whispers and shadows, fought through obsessive personal games. In one famous encounter, Michael invited Prince to a ping-pong match, and, to the fury of the hyper-competitive Prince, the surprisingly skilled pop star beat him soundly. The rivalry also played out in secret, with reports of Michael attending Prince's concerts in elaborate disguises. He wasn't there as a fan, but as a scout, meticulously studying his rival's stagecraft and the crowd's reaction, searching for weaknesses and ideas he could co-opt and perfect. But the final, most bitter detail of their fallout was Prince's long-held and deeply felt belief that the music industry, and specifically Michael's team at CBS Records, actively worked to suppress his success. He was convinced that the corporate machine favored the more commercially palatable and less controversial king of pop. He saw Michael not just as a rival, but as the face of a system that was fundamentally rigged against a fiercely independent black artist like himself, who refused to compromise. This reframes Prince's actions not as simple pettiness or ego, but as a righteous fight for his artistic life against a powerful institution. He wasn't just trying to beat Michael Jackson, he was trying to beat the entire industry that had crowned him. This deep-seated resentment added a layer of profound and bitter anger to his side of the feud, ensuring that their war would have no truce. The kings who built each other's thrones. In the end, their epic battle for the throne of pop music left them both isolated at the top, forever defined by the rival who pushed them to greatness. We witnessed a journey that began with a disastrous on-stage showdown, was cemented by an insulting lyric that killed a masterpiece, and devolved into a lifelong obsession fought in the shadows. Michael Jackson and Prince were locked in a silent war, fueled by their fundamentally different philosophies. One craved universal adoration. The other demanded absolute artistic freedom. They were two kings who could never share the same kingdom. But their rivalry was not just a story of conflict, it was a story of creation. Their legacies are inextricably linked, a double helix of 80s musical genius. Michael's unprecedented global success pushed Prince to be more daring, more innovative, and more unapologetically unique. And Prince's raw, unpredictable, and multifaceted artistic genius ensured that Michael could never rest on his laurels, forcing him to constantly push the boundaries of pop music, dance, and spectacle. They were the two opposing forces that defined an era, and in their relentless competition, they elevated not only their own art, but the very landscape of popular music. This leads to the great unanswered question that haunts their legacies. Who was the greater artist, and did their intense rivalry ultimately help or hinder their creative potential by forcing them to constantly innovate in the shadow of the other? They were the two brightest stars in the galaxy, destined to illuminate the world, but fated to never share the same sky. If this story resonated with you, share your thoughts in the comments below, and don't forget to like this video, subscribe to our channel, and hit the notification bell so you don't miss our next story.